I'm Karen Lee, and I'd like to share some tips with you about reading today that may help you at home with your child. Reading is one of the most important things that a child has to learn in school. If they don't succeed with the reading, every other subject becomes hard, even math, because by the time they're in first grade, they have word problems that they have to read to be able to figure out. So reading is the one key thing that we have to lay that foundation for as early as pre-K. And I would suggest to you or anybody that you know that has a small child, even a baby, you think they're not listening, but they are. That's one of the most important things you can do. Even when they don't really understand all the words, they're learning how books work, the progression from left to right when reading, and you would be so surprised at how many words they'll actually remember. They hear sounds, they learn how language works. So if you have a small child at home that's not even school age, I suggest go ahead and start reading to that child from the very start. I've even heard of people reading to them before they're born, and research says that helps too, but that I'm not sure about. One of the first things I wanted to talk to you about today, when we start reading, the first thing we have to learn are those letters, and when a child comes to school, they look like squiggle marks. And those letters, they have to learn to make a sound. And when you put letters together, those letter sounds make a word. And what words do or make sentences, sentences make stories. And a child has to learn that stories are expressions of their life, and they need all those parts. And the difference in reading and writing, which go hand in hand, when you are reading, you go from letters to sounds. And when you're writing, you go from sounds to letters. I don't know if you've ever thought about that, but you're doing exactly the opposite, but those things go hand in hand. And usually when you have a good reader, you'll have a good writer. And in the 28 years or so that I've been in education, one of the things that is very common, that if you have a child that says, I don't like school or I don't like reading, it's because they're having difficulty with it. I don't think I've ever heard a child who really can read say, I don't like to. Of course, unless they're being made to read something that they don't want to read. And none of us like to do that. But let's talk about letter sounds. It's very important that we make letter sounds correctly to start with from the beginning of a child's education. In South Georgia, we put the many syllables sometimes on one letter, like the letter P turns into B, which is the letter B that I'm talking about. We need to make sure that the sounds our child says when they're reading words and they're telling you letters, that they make a clean, crisp sound to that letter. Vowel sounds. They need to understand the difference in long and short vowel sounds, and believe it or not, we do that in kindergarten already. I think probably years ago we learned it in probably 3rd or 4th grade. Kindergarten does long and short vowel sounds. Make sure they understand that it has nothing to do with size. And I have a little chart, and I have several handouts. If you need any of these, you're welcome to come by Blackshire Elementary. I'll share these with you. But make sure the child understands the difference. And there's many tricky letters that we have in the alphabet, and we'll talk about those more as we go along. But sounding it out, I hear that all the time, and I used to say that too, but that is the hardest way to find out what a word is. And I suggest that you not say that to your child, because it's fine if the word has 3 letters, cat, that's easy. But when you get to a letter or a word that's past 3 letters, by the time they get to the end, they've forgotten. Just think about the word elephant. Nobody would ever get that word if that's all they knew is to sound it out. So we need to teach children to find the chunks in words and to be able to see how words work. One way we teach them that is by making and breaking words. And this is something that's very simple that you can even do at home. Your refrigerator is a perfect place, or even these are little stovetop covers. I think I buy them at the Dollar Tree. There's 4 for $1. Very simple. These letters can be purchased there too. But for a child who's having trouble understanding, the words have patterns in them just like numbers do. And I'll start with a small word. And you can do this several ways. I'll show you one way for a beginner reader. here's the small word owl. And I would have some letters on each side. If you're going to start with the child, put the letters on this side that you may be adding to the end, the letters on this side that you're adding to the beginning. Ask the child if they can make the word call, and see if they can find a letter in the side that would make that word. Show it to them, have them read it, call, take it apart. How about the word haul? See if they can find the letter haul. And go through that with several letters. Next, you still have the word owl. Show them that you want them to make the word walk. So here you're seeing if they can do beginning sounds and ending sounds, and explain to them if it's a word like owl, that even though you've taken one L off, it still says owl. Walk. They still have the little sound of owl, but they've added a different beginning and a different end. They could also do now talk. But this is how what we say when we mean make and break, that children begin to learn to see the patterns in words. And like I say, this is simply done with things you have around the home. If you don't have these little covers, if you have these magnetic letters, this is a perfect place to put this on the refrigerator. You can mix the letters all up. You can even put little words on magnets, put them on the refrigerator, little sight words, and ask your child while you're cooking, find the sight word at, the sight word the, whatever they're having trouble with. It can be, for an older child, there's spelling words. They have to find the letters that make the spelling word that you're having them work on. Okay, and finding chunks in words, that's what we want children to do when they are reading a book and they come to a word that's very difficult for them. First of all, see if they can find anything in the word they know. And I was looking at this word chunk. There is a chunk here that they studied, usually and they know that that makes two sounds together. And even this word, ch, because usually by first grade, they know some of these chunks. They may not be real familiar with them, but when you're doing make and break, like you can do the word here, and then have them make sun, fun, run. It shows them how word families fit together. When you get to larger words, look at the word animal. That the child might have trouble with that as a total word, but if they can get and then animal, they may have trouble with the AL, but usually how it's used in a sentence may help them figure out the word too. Look at the word forgot. We have two words that are put together. There's also the chunk or in that word, the word print. And I just chose randomly some as I looked around the room today. In the word print, I see in. And they know that, if they know that the two consonants coming together at the beginning make blend, print, they can put it together. But that finding words by sounding it out is the hardest way to do it. Please have them find chunks in words. And what I've tried to do today is show you some of the most problem areas I've seen through the years for young readers, and some of them that are having difficulty on through higher grades. These are still some of the problems they're having. There's certain rules they learn early on, and I just want you to be aware of how much difference, and to remind them how much difference it makes in a word. There's always that sneaky E. And sneaky E makes a great difference at the end of a word. Even though you don't hear a sneaky E, look at the word hat. And look how much it changes if you were writing a sentence with hat, and hat is the word you wanted, and you wrote the word hate, or vice versa. I hat broccoli that's on my plate. Well, that wouldn't make any sense, but I hate. So I always tell them, sneaky E is there. He has a very important job to do. He jumps over and he scares that A, or pinches it and makes it say its name. Look at these two words. You have plan without the E. With the E, you have plain. Well, if your child writes on the test, even at an older age, I wrote on the plan. Whoever is grading that test may not have a clue what the child really means. So even a sneaky E makes a difference, because not only do tests have to be legible, they have to make sense, or test answers. So look at the difference and make sure your child is aware of that when they're writing at home or reading. Another problem that children have, chunks that we see in words all the time, are related to bossy R. And folks, when I say words like sneaky E and bossy R, you can talk all day to a child in kindergarten even about O-R, A-R-E-R, I-R-U-R, and they won't remember that. They need a hook or link or something catchy that makes them remember. And when you start talking about bossy R, how it bosses all those vowels around, it doesn't let them make the long sound or the short sound. It makes them say what it wants them to say. And O-R almost always says or. The A-R always says R. The E-R-I-R and U-R are the really confusing bunch because they all make the same sound. And I tell them as they grow older and the more they go to school, they will figure out which one it is when they're trying to spell the words. But the thing I want them to remember is the sound that it all makes the same sound. R makes them all say the same thing. It just bosses them around all the time. And if you look, this O-R, A-R, E-R, all this relates back to chunks in words. That's what you want a child to be able to see. If they come across the word star, just think if they tried to sound that word out, S-T-A-R, they're never going to get it. They have two chunks in there, st-ar, and if they know that A-R says R, and of course there's always exceptions to the rule, but I tell them, always try this first. And then if it doesn't make sense, try something else you know. Okay, other confusing things about the English language is that confused Y. Y is probably one of the most aggravating letters in the English language, for use of better words. Y says Y at the beginning of a word, but it never ever says that at the end of a word. When you have a Y at the end of a short word, it makes the long I sound, usually a 2 or 3 letter word. There are exceptions, of course, always. I tell them on a longer word, try the long E sound word, with the long E sound first. Happy. Y says the long E sound, happy. And then when Y follows the letter A, that's when it acts like a vowel. You don't hear Y at all. You hear the A sound. And they have the AY chunk in so many words, all the days of the week, away. They see that very frequently. So that's an important rule for them to remember also. So Y is just confused. It doesn't know what to say. And one thing that Y is confused with mostly when you're asking them the sounds, Y says Y. Well, that is the same movement that your mouth makes when it's saying the letter U. But U says or long U. And if you've ever thought about it, when you're saying Y, your mouth moves in the same way that it does when it's saying the sound of W. But when you're saying the letter W, your mouth makes the same sound as it does when you are saying the letter D. So how confusing it is to children. These letters are very confusing, but just know that it's confusing to all, not all, but a lot of young children, young readers, and some on beyond that. Another problem we have are ghost letters, a catchy phrase for that. Things like GH in words. Not only GH, but also like in the word school, you always have exceptions to the rule. Sometimes CH makes the K sound, but that is not as common as GH words, and I put just a few there to show you. I tell them that those are ghost letters, and of course I also explain that there's not really any ghosts. That's just for fun, but supposedly the ghosts, we hear them, but we don't see them, or we see them, but we don't hear them. I got that exactly backwards. They are there, but they don't make any sound. And what's even funnier, that the ghost letter, a lot of the times, if it follows the I, it makes I say its name. It scares it. Anytime you have the I before the GH, the ghost letters, it will scare it and make it say its name. Of course, here's an exception to that. you have an OU there, but you don't have a long I, you have the off sound, thought. Okay, enough about ghost letters, and on to those B and D letters. I have mothers and fathers and grandmothers saying all the time, my child must be dyslexic because they're having trouble with the B and D, and they may be on in 3rd grade, and that's still confusing them. But folks, when you look at it, look how close. And when you're a young child, and even sometimes an older child, I can see where they're confused because it's the same thing, even though mine are a little different looking. They're just, it's backward strokes. One way that we teach bed, B and D are with bed. The B starts the bed, and the D is this way. Also, we show them by hand. We make that symbol. Here's the head of the bed, the stick and the ball, and here's the end of the bed, and we have that D sound. We have the ball and then the stick. In a Sunday program that I'm also teaching, a way that they share how to teach B and D, they say, with B, you have the bat and then the ball, 2 B letters, B. And at the end here, D, it says C makes D because C comes before D, and that's how you put D together. However your child can figure it out, I suggest you use them. But B and D are confusions that are very common, but they make quite a difference too in our writing, because if you're writing or reading and you say, my Bob was asleep in his house last night, of course that doesn't make sense. And if I drove into a dog, that doesn't really make sense, and you don't want that to happen either. So make sure that you realize that is common, but do whatever, help your child figure that out as we try that at school also. Okay, and one more thing I want to talk about before I get on to more tips in reading or move along is COPS. This is something also that came from the Sunday program, which is an intervention program, COPS. And each child gets to be their own COP. As we're writing in that program, when we write a sentence for the day, I have them write the small word COPS. And what COPS stands for, this is kind of small print, capitalization, order, punctuation, and spelling. And they write their sentence. I dictate a sentence that they write, or sometimes they write a sentence on their own, and then I have them write COPS. And I ask them to check their paper. And I say, check what does C stands for, capital letter at the beginning. And if they have it, they give themselves a check. Are your words are written in the right order? For example, they might say the buried dog his bone. Well, of course, that wouldn't be the right order. But in this case, the dog buried his bone. Order is correct. And then, do I have punctuation on my sentence? Yes. Are my words spelled right? And of course, sometimes I may have to look over it for them, but most of the time they get the check there too, because they try really hard. They want all the checks and no X, and they like self-checking. And even sometimes when I don't ask them, once they're used to that, I see them do it. And if they've left something off or something's not right, because with order they reread their sentence, they fix it without even me asking them. So that might be something that you share with your child at home. Okay, and I'm going to end with a story today because I want to share some strategies or tips with you when your child is reading a book at home to you, or when you're sharing a story with your child. There's 3 things, if I had to say, that are more important than anything when you're reading a child. There's 3 things a child needs to remember when they come to a point of difficulty with reading. The first thing is visual cue. What I mean by that is they need to look at the word. When they come to a word they don't know, check the first letter of that word, get that sound in your mouth and your mouth ready to say it. If it's a word that starts with D, look at that letter, decide what it is, get the D sound in your mouth before you attempt. The second thing they need to do is check the picture in the book. The picture is where they get meaning. So if the word I know starts with D and there's a dog in the picture, well, that's the meaning I'm looking for. What could this word be in the story? And the last one is structure. When I read that, the dog is running after the cat. Did that make sense? Or if I read, that's what I mean by structure. Or if I said the dragon buried his bone, and there's a picture of the dog. Well, I guess a dragon could bury a bone, but that doesn't really keep structure. If I said the dog or the duck barked at the cat, it doesn't sound right. Okay, so 3 cues: visual, meaning, and structure. Visual being the first letter, meaning be as when they use the picture, and structure, does the word sound right in the sentence I just read? And folks, that's another thing I'd like to remind you about. When a child reads a book, I hear a lot of people say, cover up that picture. Pictures are in stories, and they're very vital to, especially a young reader, because that's where they get the meaning of the story. Otherwise, they're having so much difficulty, some of them, figuring out what the word is. That picture carries them through the meaning of the story, so they don't lose what the story is about as they work through a word. Please always let them look at the picture. And now, I also have another handout right here that I put on the board. It's the 5 things to check for. And you may have this if you come by, but there's 5 things. Think about the story. Check the picture. Go back and get your mouth ready for that first letter of the word. Look for any chunks in the story. And then think about it. Does it sound right or make sense? And if it doesn't, a good reader will always go back and fix whatever is wrong. Okay, and the last thing I want to share with you today is the story Wolf. And the reason I'd like to share this is when you pick up a book or your child brings home a library book, please start asking them questions. We used to say things like, who is in the story? Well, those things are very easily answered. But like in this book, when I'm through with the book, I'd like for, if I was reading it to my child or my child was reading it to me, what the kind of questions we need to start asking are things like, how has the wolf's life changed from the beginning to the story to the end? Has it changed for the better or worse? And tell me some things to support what you think. It has to be in-depth questions because, folks, that's the way that testing is going these days. It's not just a one-answer question anymore. And the story is Wolf. I always talk to your children about the cover, if there is one. Like, what do you think is going to happen in this story? Where do you think they're at? Just let them come up with ideas. Have them thinking about the story. Very young children, sometimes I even go through a picture walk with where I just talk about a little of the pictures, but I'm not going to do that today. I just want you to look. I might ask them, where do you think this is happening? Out in the country or in a city? What do you think the problem with this wolf is? Do these people look happy? Talk about the thoughts, what's going on in the picture. And here's Wolf. Where do you think he's at now? What's he doing? And also, this is a good time to talk about vocabulary, punctuation marks, how punctuation kind of tells us what to do in our reading, when to stop, how to say a word, what kind of inflection to put in the story as we read. After walking for many days, a wolf wandered into a quiet little town. He was tired and hungry, and his feet ached, and he had only a little money that he kept for emergencies. Then he remembered, there's a farm outside this village, he thought. I'll find some food there. Okay, there's a big word, emergency. And you may think that your child knows what that is, whether you're reading to them or they're reading to you. Stop and ask them, what do you think? What do you think that money is for if he's got money for an emergency? See if they know. It's a good time to work on vocabulary. You also might have them find some words. Can you show me the word walking? Can you show me the word little? Find some sight words, or can you find a chunk in the word farm or a small word? This is a good time to do word work. And you may want to do that as you go through. You may want to come back and talk about it. Even that word wandered, it said wandered into a quiet little town. Well, what does wandered mean? Make sure they understand those bigger words. As he peered over the farm fence, he saw a pig, a duck, and a cow reading in the sun. The wolf had never seen animals read before. I'm so hungry that my eyes are playing tricks on me, he said to himself. But he really was very hungry and didn't stop to think about it for long. The wolf stood up tall and took a deep breath. This might be a time you want to ask your child, if your child's even reading to you, what do you think he's going to do now? What's he thinking? Is he going to eat these people? Is he going to join them? What do you think is in his mind? And what kind of mood do you think he's in? And he leaped at the animals with a howl. Oh! Chickens and rabbits ran for their lives, but the duck, the pig, and the cow didn't budge. What is that awful noise? Complained the cow. I can't concentrate on my book. Just ignore it, said the duck. What is that word, concentrate? What do you think that cow was doing? Many questions you can ask. The wolf did not like to be ignored. What's wrong with you? Growled the wolf. Can't you see I'm a big and dangerous wolf? I'm sure you are, replied the pig, but couldn't you be big and dangerous somewhere else? We're trying to read. This is a farm for educated animals. Now be a good wolf and go away, said the pig, giving him a push. Perfect time to ask your child, what's the difference in an educated animal and one that's not educated? What do you think the difference is? Have them think beyond just what's in the story. The wolf had never been treated like this before. Educated animals, the wolf repeated to himself. This is something new. Well then, I'll learn how to read too. And off he went to school. The children found it strange to have a wolf in their class, but since he didn't try to eat anyone, they soon got used to him. The wolf was serious and hardworking, and after much effort, he learned to read and write. And soon he became the best in the class. Feeling quite satisfied, the wolf went back to the farm and jumped over the fence. I'll show them, he thought. He opened his book and began to read. Run, wolf, run. See, wolf, run. You've got a long way to go, said the duck, without even bothering to look at him. And the pigs, the duck, and the cow went on reading their own books, not the least impressed. Perfect time to say, what do you think was wrong with his reading? I mean, how should he have read it? Let them show you and let them look at the punctuation. Talk about punctuation marks. The wolf jumped back over the fence and ran straight to the public library. He studied long and hard, reading lots of dusty old books, and he practiced and practiced until he could read without stopping. They'll be impressed with my reading now, he said to himself. What do you think that word impressed means? And who's going to be impressed? The wolf walked up to the farm gate and knocked. He opened the 3 little pigs and began to read. Once upon a time there were 3 little pigs. One day their mother called the man and told them, Stop that racket, interrupted the duck. You have improved, remarked the pig, but you still need to work on your style. The poor wolf tucked his tail between his legs and slunk away. I wonder what interrupted. That is a really big word. Ask your child what that means. Make sure they know. But the wolf wasn't about to give up. He counted the little money he had left, went to the bookshop and bought a splendid new storybook, his first very own book. He was going to read it day and night, every letter and every line. He would read so well that the farm animals would admire him. Ding dong, rang the wolf at the farm gate. He lay down on the grass, made himself comfortable, took out his new book and began to read. He read with confidence and passion. And the pig, the cow, and the duck all listened and said not one word. Each time he finished a story, the pig, the duck, and the cow asked if he would please read them another. So the wolf read on, story after story. One minute he was Little Red Riding Hood, the next a genie emerging from a lamp, and then a swashbuckling pirate. This is so much fun, said the duck. He's a master, said the pig. Why don't you join us on our picnic today, offered the cow. And so they all had a picnic, the pig, the duck, the cow, and the wolf. They lay in the tall grass and told stories all the afternoon long. We should all become storytellers, said the cow suddenly. We could travel around the world, added the duck. We can start tomorrow morning, said the pig. The wolf stretched in the grass. He was happy to have such wonderful friends. And the perfect time to say, what changed in the life of the wolf and why? Please ask your child things that really make them think a little deeper about the story. And if you have any questions, please come by Blackshear Elementary and let us share some tips with you, some handouts, and any time that we can help, please come by. Thank you.